together in a massive recovery lot, shattered windows, crushed door, rainfall. Our top priority is the safety of residents. Tavlus.
On the evening of the 12th of May, 2026, the Turkish province of Samsun didn't just experience rain, it experienced a kinetic redistribution of mass that paralyzed an entire urban center. We often view weather as an external inconvenience, something to be managed with umbrellas or rain tires. This is a fundamental error in strategic thinking. From a systems perspective, the atmosphere is a massive heat engine, and Havza happened to be the point where that engine reached its critical exhaust limit. Earlier that afternoon, the Turkish Meteorological Service issued a yellow code. It is a routine administrative signal. But by 6:00 p.m., the atmospheric equilibrium over the inner Black Sea region collapsed with a speed that left local authorities zero room for tactical response. This was a systemic shock. The Havza Osman stream, a waterway that has cut through the heart of Havza for generations, exceeded its engineering.
The man trapped on top of a vehicle being carried away by the flood.
The floodwaters didn't just rise, they struck. They tore up sidewalk paving stones. They overturned dozens of vehicles. They transformed the central plaza of Karat Square into a high-velocity hydraulic flume. At American Sky Brief, we look at the data behind the debris. To understand how a routine storm turns into a catastrophic infrastructure failure, we have to look past
emergency kitchens distributed hot meals to residents and exhausted.
Understanding why Havza failed requires us to first grasp the thermodynamic reality of the Black Sea Basin. The engine that fueled this event was not an isolated storm cloud. It was a complex interaction between moisture transport and orographic lift. The Black Sea serves as a massive thermal reservoir. Throughout the spring of 2026, sea surface temperatures remained consistently above historical averages, leading to evaporation. This created a layer of warm, moisture-heavy air sitting just above the water's surface. On May 12, prevailing wind patterns began channeling this air mass directly inland toward the Anatolian interior. As this air mass moved, it encountered the rising elevation of the Pontic Mountains. This is where the physics becomes violent. When moisture-laden air hits a mountain range, it has no choice but to go off. The air rises and undergoes adiabatic cooling. The higher it goes, the colder it gets, and the less water it can hold. Physics is unyielding on this point. The vapor condenses into liquid, but this phase change is not a passive event. It releases latent heat back into the surrounding air. This creates a feedback loop where the released heat makes the air mass even more buoyant, causing it to rise faster, cool further, and dump even more. In the case of the sandstone, this creates massive convective available potential energy. The atmosphere became a loaded spring. By the time the storm reached Havza, the engine was running at maximum output. The precipitation wasn't just heavy rain. It was a vertical column of water dropping millions of tons of mass onto a specific narrow geographical coordinate. We also have to consider the aerodynamic reality of the inner Black Sea region. The mountains
using ropes and pulled him to safety only seconds before the vehicle disappeared
directly in one of these natural funnels. The Havza Osman and Tursikan streams are the natural exhaust pipes for this system. When the sky opened at 6:00 p.m., those pipes were simply too small for the volume of water the atmospheric engine was producing. The energy release was staggering. Every cubic meter of water falling from the sky carries kinetic energy. When you multiply that by millions of meters falling from thousands of feet in the air, you aren't just looking at a storm, you are looking at a kinetic bombardment. This water didn't just fall, it sought the lowest point of gravity with absolute efficiency. Witness accounts from the district describe a wall of water that appeared with almost no warning. A local pharmacist standing in the path of the surge noted that there was no time to react, only time to move to higher ground. This is the reality of a system that has moved beyond the boiling phase and into the sheer volume of runoff from the surrounding hillsides converged into the urban center within minutes. We have to understand that in a modern town like Havza, the ground is not your friend during a flood. Asphalt and concrete provide zero infiltration. Every drop that hit the streets of the Tay and Bachelor neighborhoods became immediate runoff. The town center was essentially rebranded as a lake bed in under 10 minutes.
Water. The Chai and Bache Li Evler neighbor.
Civil engineering and fluid dynamics. Human infrastructure is built on a set of mathematical compromises called return periods. We design bridges and drainage channels to handle the 1 in 50 year or 1 in 100 year flood. The May 12 event in Havza proved that these historical baselines are increasingly irrelevant. Water is a non-compressible fluid, and it carries immense weight.
Before
As the
shop owners
Havza
even had time to
Osman stream
react.
its banks, that mass began
The water
moving to the town center at high velocity. This is where we see the scientific limits of human engineering. The urban core of Havza is a labyrinth of impermeable surfaces. These surfaces do not absorb water, they accelerate it. The streets ceased to be transportation corridors and became concrete-lined hydraulic flumes. The kinetic energy of the floodwaters reached a point where it could overcome the static
as
friction
authorities
of the water.
raced to contain the
This is why we
catastrophe.
saw multi-ton vehicles of steel and rubber picked up and overturned like toys. This is why the very stones of the sidewalks were torn from the earth. The collision with the electrical grid was equally devastating. In many parts of the district, utility poles and power lines were physically compromised by the sheer hydraulic force of the water. This created a cascading failure as the water rose to the second floors of buildings in the town. The power wasn't just cut. The physical delivery system was dismantled by the weight of the water. This added a layer of complexity to the rescue efforts. Teams from AFAD, the State Hydraulic Works, and the Highways Authority were moving through a submerged landscape without light, dealing with the raw debris of a collapsed urban system. The human impact was concentrated in these moments of structural failure. An 3-year-old man was forced to build another structural element just to stay above the rushing water. Think about that for a second. An entire life of experience reduced to the strength of one's grip against a hydraulic surge. A young man was trapped on the roof of a car, moving at the speed of the current until emergency teams could intervene. These aren't just incidents. They are data points showing that when infrastructure fails, the human element is left exposed to the raw physics of the planet. Despite the massive scale of the response involving 17 different AFAD centers and emergency teams from neighboring provinces, the initial 10 minutes of the peak rainfall dictated the outcome. The system had been breached, and the damage was absolute before the first siren even sounded. Navigating the gray area between verified trend and scientific hypothesis is the core focus here at American Sky Brief. In the wake of Havza, we have to be very clear about what the data tells us and what we are still debating. Let's start with the verified facts. It is a proven thermodynamic law that for every 1 degree Celsius increase in atmospheric temperature, the air can hold significantly more moisture. This is known as the Clausius-Clapeyron relation. The verified trend we are seeing globally, and specifically in the Black Sea Basin, is that the atmosphere's fuel tank is larger than it used to be. When the conditions for a storm are met, the payload is significantly heavier. The Havza event is a direct manifestation of this trend. The water that flooded those pharmacies and homes was water that the atmosphere was now capable of carrying because it is warmer than it was 50 years ago. Now let's look at the scientific hypotheses. Researchers are currently debating the impact of atmospheric blocking patterns in the mid-latitudes. One hypothesis suggests that the weakening of the polar jet stream is causing weather systems to become stagnant. Instead of moving across a region, they park over a single area. Dumping their entire moisture load in a concentrated window. Was the Havza storm a victim of a blocking pattern? Our current forecast models are still being stress tested against the data from May 12. There is also a debate about the role of sea surface temperature anomalies in the
Structure
Havza.
once again
Some
proved
scientists
unable to
hypothesize
withstand
that
the
we are entering
increasingly
a period of
extreme weather.
convection, where the moisture flux from the sea is becoming so intense that it bypasses our traditional warning thresholds entirely. These are the gray areas. We know the payloads are getting heavier. We are still trying to understand if the delivery systems are becoming more erratic. This is where the informed observer must focus. We are looking at a shift in the very nature of how our world interacts with its atmosphere. If the jet stream is indeed slowing, and if the Black Sea is becoming a more efficient fuel source for storms, then Havza is not an outlier. It is a preview. We are moving into a period where the extreme becomes the norm. Scientific projections and hypothetical stress tests are no longer just academic exercises. They are the blueprints for future survival. When we talk about forecast models, we are talking about the only tool we have to stay ahead of a system that is moving faster than our ability to build concrete walls. The ultimate takeaway for the informed observer is that we are entering an era of systemic fragility. The Havza flood was not a freak accident. It was a predictable outcome of an atmospheric region running at more fuel than our infrastructure was designed to handle. The strategic outlook suggests that our historical reliance on old flood data is no longer a viable defense strategy. We cannot keep building for the 20th century while living in the 21st. Going forward, urban engineering must move toward dynamic resilience. This means building cities that can survive inundation rather than just trying to prevent it. It means permeable surfaces that allow the ground to breathe. It means decentralized power grids that can lose a limb and keep the heart beating. It means early warning systems that prioritize kinetic energy potential over mere rainfall amounts. The rain in Havza eventually subsided and the water receded. Governors and district officials surveyed the mud and the overturned cars, praising the response teams for their speed, and they should. 12 people were injured, but 0 lives were lost. That is a testament to the human element. But the system has been permanently altered. The atmosphere has shown its hand. The next 10-minute window could happen anywhere. It could happen in a different province, a different country, or a different continent. The math has changed, and it is up to us to adjust our designs before the next engine reaches its exhaust limit. Keep your eyes on the data. Stay observant. American Sky Brief, out.